Good morning, Viewpoint. Good morning. Right on, yeah. Let's get it going. Bring some Viewpoint spirit in the house. On the second day of World Ready Week, we are overjoyed to have Mr. Jon M. as our honored guest. Mr. Chu is a trailblazer in the entertainment industry, known for his directorial work on films like Wicked, right on, Crazy Rich Asians, and In the Heights. With his unique vision and ability to bring diverse stories to life, his groundbreaking work has pushed boundaries and continues to redefine representation in film. His passion for creativity, inclusivity, and making an impact on the world is inspiring, and we're all eager to hear more about his journey. Mr. Chu's experiences in both the creative and professional realms, he's even an author, folks. Yeah, right on. His experiences in both the creative and professional realms are sure to spark meaningful conversations this week about belonging, creativity, and the power of storytelling. So please welcome to the Carlson Family Theater stage, Jon M. Chu.
What's up, Viewpoint? Good to see you this morning.
Our Viewpoint students are in assembly dress. Just for you, we figured out how to wear green t-shirts with assembly dress today.
Nice.
Because as we were telling you, thank you so much for taking the invitation.
Of course.
We really appreciate your being with us today, and it's a very special time we have with you, and we want to get the most out of it. So World Ready Week is all about our mission, and you are the best person we could have to be our opening keynote for the week. This event started some 8 years ago as Diversity Leadership Day, where we'd have 5 blocks of activities in a day. And so this year we reimagined it as World Ready Week. And as I mentioned, we have an activity every day for 5 days. Yesterday we had over 150 students involved in student-led workshops. Raise a hand if you led a workshop yesterday. Right on.
Nice. Wow.
And so you're the ideal keynote today for your work and representation, but also because of your journey. And our mission is exceptional readiness for extraordinary futures. And so we're fascinated to hear about your journey. So to open it up, I'm going to ask the first question. And I want to take our students back just to Sunday night at the Oscars. And as I was watching the Oscars telecast, I was thinking about the fact that your film is a little bit, in some ways, a cultural event of the year. There was a through line from that incredible opening number with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo.
Yeah, that was a beautiful opening number. It was incredible.
So I was thinking of you sitting there, you know, watching them sing Over the Rainbow from the original film, sing Home from The Wiz, and then, of course, Defying Gravity. All the way through the broadcast to that tribute to Quincy Jones, also from The Wiz.
Yeah.
And, of course, your film won 2 Oscars. For production design, which was incredible, and the Oscar for costume design, which was the first black man honored with an Oscar.
Yeah, amazing.
Which was
Paul
incredible.
Tazwell. Incredible.
He gave a lovely shout out to you from the stage as his director. So taking you back those 48 hours, and then I also want to take you back to Pinewood School in Los Altos, and I think it's probably in the 90s, maybe?
Yeah, in the 90s. Thanks for calling it out.
Yeah. So I ran into the current head of Pinewood School, Mr. Riches, because we all know each other.
Wow. Okay.
And he remembers you. And Pinewood, if you don't know it, is a school in Los Altos, and it's K-12, so it's a lot like Viewpoint. And we've talked about your experiences there. And Mr. Riches remembers you when he was at the school as well. He remembers you as that kid with the camcorder.
Yes.
When you were in probably...
A camcorder is a camera back in those days. Not a phone, but yes.
Probably was it mini DV tape? I don't know.
It was mini DV. It was, high 8 and then mini DV.
Yeah. So my question is, I'd like you to take us on that journey.
Yeah.
Like, just as the first question, like, tell us about the steps from being that student at Pinewood School, like our students getting ready for the future, through USC to Sunday night at the Oscars.
It's been a journey, but I love being here today because high school, middle school, I went to Pinewood and all the way from kindergarten all the way through. I think you call them lifers here. We call them evergreen where I come from. And so all my brothers and sisters, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. And so by the time I got in, all the teachers called me by my brother's name. And my brothers and sisters' names were in the banners in the gymnasium already. And so I was pretty, I came in with a path, but not my path. But I loved, even being here today. It just feels the energy of those times were so great because you could do anything. It was such a safe place that I could be involved in so many things and never feel judgment. Of course, you're a kid, you always feel that a little bit of judgment, but not the actual real world judgment, which is a whole nother level of that. So I felt very protected in this bubble. And growing up in the Silicon Valley in the 80s and 90s, this is where, right down the street from Apple and Google, and at that point, Google wasn't even around. NASA was right there, Lockheed and things like that. So when my parents have a Chinese restaurant there called Chef Chu's, and it's still there, 55 years. So I would do that's a long time. So I had this, I always call it the House of Stories, that restaurant, because I would go there after school, be dropped off there, I'd do my homework at the bar, not drinking, I would just have, I had my Shirley Temple, I'd have all the cherries in the world in a cup, but I would dream. Because my parents were saying, this is the best country in the world. Yes, we have our issues, but they came here as immigrants and started a business, not knowing a word of English, and now people were coming to them, and they always felt like this restaurant. Yes, we fed them, but we also filled their hearts, is what they always said. And so people, when they go into a restaurant, sometimes don't treat people at a restaurant very nicely. This is like, oh, you're my server or whatever. And I would witness that, and it would really bother me. And I remember going to my dad and my mom, and they sat me down, and they said, we are ambassadors for our culture here. Yes, we feed them, but actually, we're maybe one of the first Chinese families they'll ever meet. So however they treat you, we're going to have them have them leave here and love us. So so next time they run into a Chinese family, maybe they'll think twice before they treat them in any other way. So for me, there was a responsibility for our family and why we were there. And so everyone would tell their stories coming into the restaurant, and my dad said, oh, my son makes movies, makes little videos, and I would do little wedding videos or class videos with my friends, and so people started giving me digital video cards. At that point, there was no digital video; it was all on tape, and so they started giving us, because they worked at tech companies, these video cards that someone my age, I was 14, 15, had no business of owning, but they just gave it to us and gave me people from Adobe gave me Photoshop and After Effects, the beta versions before they were all out. And so I got to learn in that digital world very early, and luckily I got the hang of it. I had to figure it out by myself. My parents couldn't help me. No teacher could help me. So that's where it all sort of started, in this little house of stories, and getting the technology and trying to figure out how to put images and sound together in ways that could express what I'm feeling. And I remember showing my parents for the first time a video I made. It was just a collection of vacation videos, and it was to music. And I set them down in our living room, and I put it on, and my parents started crying when they watched it, because it was our family on TV. And they love TV and they love movies, so we were in their box, and we looked normal to them, and we looked like we belonged. And I remember thinking, oh, there's something here. I could draw, but I wasn't the best drawer. I played in band, but I was a terrible saxophone player. I did theater, but I was not a great actor. But for some reason, when I had the camera and I could edit these images together, I could say something. I found something that I could do. And so that's what I clung to. And from then on, I just kept making stuff. And luckily, I got into USC film school here. Luckily, my parents allowed me to, to only apply to film schools. And so I went here. I moved to LA, to USC, and that was the first time that I really felt the real world, because you have to, you know, when you guys go to college, you change. That's where you really are cut loose. And so I went through a whole thing in there. I won't even get into all of that stuff. But graduating from USC, my short film is what got attention in LA. I got an agent and manager from that, which is not normal, but for some reason, this one short film, which is a musical, which all my teachers told me, do not make musicals, they're dead. This is in 2000. Chicago wasn't even out yet at that point. Moulin Rouge maybe had just come out, but it didn't do well in the theater. So everyone was like, musicals are literally dead. If you want a job, don't write or talk about musicals. But I just did it anyway. And luckily, the year that I did my short musical, Chicago did come out. So it went on its crazy box office and awards run. And so suddenly everyone's like, oh, is the musical back? And who can do musicals? And I was a student who had done a musical. So I got to ride that wave. And I got to make my first movie 5 years later is when I first, which is a whole nother story, we'll get into there, which was Step Up to the Streets, which is a sequel to Step Up. It's a dance movie, some maybe. And then Step Up 3D. And then I did a movie for Justin Bieber, Never Say Never, a documentary on his life. And then, so I started doing G.I. Joe Retaliation, Now You See Me Too. And all these things came to this point where I realized what do I want to say with all these movies? And at that point, I didn't know. But luckily, I said I need to do the thing that scares me the most, which is my cultural identity crisis, which I never talked about. So I went back to tell a story of an Asian American going to Asia for their first time, which was Crazy Rich Asians. And I didn't think anyone would see that movie. But when we made it, it felt like I got to collect all these amazing actors who weren't working, who had done stuff but not working in a movie. And when we released it to the world, it became a whole phenomenon and a whole thing and changed a lot of things, and which led me to In the Heights and Wicked. And then last night was Insane. It's the first time I've been invited to the Oscars, because I've gone to the Oscars.
Right on.
Yes. I made a fake pass to the Oscars in 2000 when I was at college. Do not do this. Now it's impossible.
You'll
literally get arrested.
Did it work?
Yeah. I laminated it at Kinko's, and I went through the front, and I got onto the red carpet, and I had my camera with me, and then I tried to sneak inside, and that's when they caught me, and they kicked me out. And then as I was walking out, I went back to my apartment, printed out another one, and I said, oh, yeah, you're going to go through the back. So I went through the back, got through. This is not a good story to tell at school. But anyway, I got in all the way to the stage, and then I met with these photographers who were taking photos in the first press area when you come off stage, and they gave me their pass. They're like, that's a great story. Now you're official. So then I got my pass. I could go to the governor's ball, and they're like, all you have to do is stand here. When every actor who wins their award, you just write their name down on this list, and now you work for us. And that's how I went to my first Oscars, which is crazy. So last night, I was legally there, sitting in row 3 next to Michelle Yeoh, next to Ray Fiennes and Adrian Brody, and I was there for that long speech, and Jeff Goldblum, and it was, and then they sang "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," and when they sang that song, I just all my memories of my family telling me about this beautiful place of America and the yellow brick road that leads you to a wizard who will give you all your heart's desire, and going back to college and realizing, oh yeah, maybe that wizard doesn't exist, and that we have to be our own wizards to make our own heart's desire come true. And then the journey with my having kids, and then doing Crazy Rich Asians, and then finally being in that chair watching them sing was a little bit too much for me. I definitely was weeping, and I was like, no cameras are looking, right? And then to have them finish up there with Defying Gravity with some giant victory, and that was probably one of the most beautiful moments of my life.
Wow. Congratulations.
And we
thank
and we
you.
and we brought the broomstick here today, which is usually in my office. But anyway, there it is. It doesn't actually fly.
I was going to say, one of our panelists can fly this out of here at the end.
Yeah.
Right?
One of the details of it that I always loved is when we were trying to figure out how big the broomstick, what kind of broomstick. We had all different versions, and we're like, what is it made of? And when I was making Crazy Rich Asians, we did this tour in Singapore, in Malaysia, and they brought us into the mangrove forest. And mangroves are like really important for the environment. There's miles and miles of them all in different areas around the world, but it's very, very important. They're one of the only plants that grow in the seawater that come out. And what we discovered in that tour was that when the roots go in the ground and they all grow really close, when they touch, they actually merge together. So much so that when you take, I'm not a scientist, so you can fact check me on this somehow, but they were telling me that when they test the DNA of it, they can't tell whether it's two things still or one. And so I love that I wanted to intertwine these mangrove roots for the broomstick neck of it. Anyway,
Wow. That's
that's the
incredible.
story of the broomstick.
Thank you for bringing it. And actually, I know that Kristen had a job to bring it too, so thank you for bringing it. So we have 6 panelists from our school, from our Student Diversity Council. Shout out to our Office of Belonging and Community. And they have some questions for you. And let's get started at the bottom of my list here with Connor.
Okay. I felt that there were a lot
And
of...
introduce yourselves.
Oh,
for
okay.
everyone. Yeah. No, we
Hello.
said we're going to...
I'm Connor, and I'm a senior. Here's my question. I felt that there were a lot of allusions to institutional racism in the prison industrial complex, like with the quelling of voices in dissent and the wrongful imprisonment of the animals. I'd assume that thematically a lot of that subject matter was baked into the written material, but how, as a filmmaker, do you think you brought those increasingly relevant political themes of the film to life?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up on those. I mean, for me, after doing Crazy Rich Asians and In the Heights, what changed in my brain was whatever time I'm spending on making a movie, because a lot of time, it's years of your life, it has to say something. It has to mean something. The intention became much more important for me. Sometimes I made stuff just because it was fun for me, which is fine too. Like I love that. But I was getting to a point in my life where I felt like there was a responsibility. If you're a part of the community and you have the opportunity to tell movies on the grandest scale, and it's basically like having a microphone to the world. And so if you get the opportunity to be on the microphone, and not everybody gets that, then you better say something or reflect the place where we are. And so for each of those, in the Crazy Rich Asians, In the Heights, they were part of what I called it was 2 of the 3 of my New View trilogy, which was this is just for myself, but I was like, I want to do sort of fairy tales or known stories of our childhood, whether it's a romantic comedy or literally a fairy tale, and tell it through a new perspective. That the Asian American girl going to Asia for the first time, we were going to both do a romantic comedy, but flip all the things you think you know about a romantic comedy. That it wasn't going to be about getting the guy in the end. It was about her own self-worth and sort of going head-to-head with his mother over a mahjong game. Like that, the movie could end there. So to me, that was like, and taking a lead actor that are usually don't look like Constance Wu or Henry Golding, that those could be heroes in a Hollywood movie, and those could be romantic leads in a Hollywood movie, and they could be funny, and they could be and they could be crazy, and that we could make fun of our own people in that way too. So there was a lot of stuff in that. And In the Heights, it was about the bodega on the corner, or the Chinese restaurant on the corner, that inside there, what people pass by every day, that there are people dreaming about dreams bigger and more expansive than any movie musical you'd ever expect. It could be as big as Lawrence of Arabia or Titanic, because that's how it feels to dream when you're in your bedroom. Even if you're at the bar of your Chinese restaurant, you're dreaming all these. So I wanted to reflect that in that. But it is it is a fairy tale in a way that, and so then for Wicked, when it came to my desk, I was like, I don't know if that goes along with what, even though I felt like, oh, that'll be really fun to do Wicked, I wasn't sure it felt like it reflected our moment. And this was during COVID. And so I went back through it. And in the words of Elphaba, and she says, something has changed within me. Something is not the same. And to me, those are just very simple words, but it resonated with me so deeply at that time, right after our lockdown, because I felt like we all didn't know what was next. It was the first time where, like, the story we were told that other people were in control and everything's going to be okay suddenly went away. And now we were on our own. And to me, that story, The Wizard of Oz, even the original Wizard of Oz, was about about the American dream, about what happens when the American dream sort of breaks down and what do you have to do and all that. So Wicked was written, the book was written about that as well at a different time in the late 90s. And then Stephen Schwartz took it to make it into a musical in the early 2000s, late 90s, about our sort of post 9/11 times. What happens when the American dream sort of dries up? And how do you redefine it? So this idea of going back to our actual American fairy tale, and remember, Wizard of Oz is one of the only timeless American fairy tales. Most of the fairy tales are written, in Europe or whatever, they have all these different things. But to have that American fairy tale, to kick the tires on that was really interesting to me. And to have a girl who's green being judged seemed so appropriate. And yet Elphaba had never been played by a woman of color on Broadway at that point, maybe as a backup, but not as the main. So for me, it was like a huge opportunity to say, oh, actually, this is a perfect part of this trilogy, that everything she's saying is relevant to this day. I guess it's also sad that we have to keep going through this cycle of speaking, a truth to power and standing up for people who are othered, but maybe that is the American way. Maybe that is what we're supposed to know, that being uncomfortable is the state of growth. And so I love that this friendship could be, and the music, of course, could be a great way to explore feeling uncomfortable. And I didn't have to touch political things. I could just touch human things. And that, to me, is like the key. That this is not about what's happening in politics. This is about what every day we get to decide who we want to be. And our stories sort of reflect that. And if in the beginning of the movie they say, does wicked, are you born wicked, or is wickedness thrust upon you? And I love that question, because who is wicked and who is good? And are we that defined? But if every day we know we are both Galinda and Elphaba, we have that strength in us. We all feel othered in some way or another, and yet we also we maybe not have the courage to go fly quite yet. To me, every day we get that choice. To me, this is the perfect venue to movie to sort of play that out. Of course, movie 2, we get into it a little deeper, coming out November 21st of this year. But
You have some fans here.
yeah, you guys. I was in the edit room yesterday and go in right after this. But that, to me, that was where it was really interesting, because we all have that question, and we all don't want to feel uncomfortable. We're so used to ordering our food on the button and driving somewhere with the button. And so anything that takes extra effort, we're like, oh, that just doesn't feel right to us anymore. But I think that the only way out is through. And I hope that this movie sort of empowers us to know that maybe there is no yellow brick road. Maybe what our parents told us isn't the reality anymore. But that's okay, because we saw a world of what it could be, and we can still make that. And it's our choice to step off that yellow brick road and find our own heart's desire and how to make that happen. But we will find it together, and you can only do that with all of us coming together. Anyway, that's the long version, sorry.
Thank you very much. Zoe.
Okay. Hello, I'm Zoe. I'm also a senior. And my question is a little similar to Connor's, but it focuses more on the animals in Oz. So I noticed that the film Wicked places a larger emphasis on the animals in Oz and how they're often discriminated against for their intelligence and ability to speak. What informed your decision to make the oppressed animal population have a larger role in the film?
That's a great question. I always felt like the animals were on stage were underserved because you didn't have, and I always felt for that. You know, I always, when she makes friends with Dr. Dillerman, even on stage, is like a really nice moment, and you root for that. But the show goes so fast. So when we split the movie in two, what we realized was you just didn't have enough room to do this story. If we were going to do the meaty version of the story, you have to have room to let moments settle and for characters to actually show characters changing and shifting. Whereas the show had to get through it, it was just too much anything. So once we split it apart, then the opportunities to actually dig deeper into the animal story was there. And so we tried to take it enough. You know, it's always about the girl's relationship, but it has to, but that tension has to be there with the animals. The bigger question was, how do you do the animals? Because are the animals bipedal? Are they like always upright, because as they are in the show, or are they, which always a little creepy to me, or are they on fours, or they look like the animals that we know? So when we made the decision, and we saw lots of versions of these humanoid animal versions, and it was so unnerving. Like, how are their hands? Dr. Dillerman had like hooves. Then we had like half hand, half hooves, which was really weird. Then we had like human hands, which is really creepy with him. So we went through all the things, and what we realized is, let's make it about accessibility. Like, rather than in like Pinocchio where they change into a donkey over time if they don't speak or something. What if instead it's about the Ozians are taking accessibility away from them. So when you first come into Oz, if they're all animals, and as we know them, as a goat is a goat and a thing, they're just more intellectually evolved, they can speak, then what if their desks are made for them? How he picks up a teacup is made for him. They've made accessible things. Their chairs are made for them. A table has different shapes for different animals. The door that comes in isn't just a door for a human. It's made for different animals to come in. And yet, as the oppression comes into this, and we don't even really talk about it, but if you look at the things as different, that we take those things away. The door only opens one way now, and the table isn't oddly shaped. It's just a square, and if you can't fit, sorry. There was like subtle things that we could put into it. And so that's sort of our decisions in the animal side. And so it just kept bringing up more questions, and that became the people that Elphaba could protect, and we get more into that in movie 2. So,
wow. Nathan.
Yeah, I'm Nathan. I'm also a senior. My question is similar, but maybe a little more broad. So, as someone involved in both musical theater and filmmaking, I really felt my two worlds coalesce during Wicked, because I felt that both sides were handled with such love and grace. And I was wondering what it was like to take on the responsibility of adapting such an enormous Broadway show like Wicked into the film that it became. How did you know when to stay true to the stage musical and when to take it on a new path? How did you create your Wicked and also have that simultaneously be our Wicked?
that's a great question. Well, there's two things to that question. There's me personally, and then there's also probably what you guys will all go through is what happens when the world thinks you need to do it a certain way, and how do you like keep going and not be crushed by expectations and things. So I'll start with that one. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. Half these wrinkles are from this movie, but I like pressure. I like being the underdog. I like everyone saying you can't do it. I love people saying, "Oh, you did a Step Up movie? Oh, too bad. You're going to be stuck in dance movies your whole life." And you'd be like, "No, that doesn't. Pigeonhole that doesn't mean anything. It's like whatever. If you know you can do others, and you will do other things, and they will see it." I love people who say, "Oh, you did a Justin Bieber concert movie? Oh gosh, I guess you're not really a filmmaker." Like, I love it when people say that. So I always see those moments as a great chapter in my next book. even though that book doesn't exist yet. And so I like to step up to those. No pun intended, I guess it was. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. But I love those challenges. So the moment I knew going into Wicked that there's going to be a lot of talk, I knew when I hired Ariana Grande or Cynthia Erivo, there's going to be a lot of talk because everyone thinks they know who Elphaba and Glinda should be. And everyone has the right to do that. That's the art that we're in. When you're making movies, television, like, it is a public art. I'm not sure there's many other, maybe politics, but maybe many other professions where whatever you do in your job, everyone has an opinion on and everyone gets to see it and everyone thinks they're an expert at it. I mean, my mom thinks she's an amazing director and casting director and studio exec. And it's cute. But no, she's very nice about it. So everyone has an opinion. So for me, you just have to get used to it. I think that's in anything you do. Anything you'll chase, get used to the naysayers. You're on the internet. I mean, you guys are the generation of more feedback than anyone deserves to have. If I heard what my friends were whispering about me in high school, I'm not sure I could have handled it. I'm glad I was older to be able to learn how to handle it. So I would be very aware of those things. But I saw there's this quote that I saw on the internet that was said like, you eat at the level of your vision. So if you are a giraffe, you eat at the top of the trees and you see what's coming. You live in the future because you see the horizon where you're headed. And you can't listen to the naysayers, the turtles below, because they have a view that's in the grass. And they may be right for their point of view because that's all they see. They may be trying to help you because that's all they see. But you're built to be a giraffe, so you need to keep walking. And the moment that again, this is all from the internet, but the moment that the giraffe tries to bend down and talk to the giraffe, to the turtle, that it has a 9-pound heart to get the blood all the way up its neck. The moment it bends down, the giraffe passes out because the giraffe is not meant to have his neck down at the view of the turtle. So if you're a turtle, you have to stay at the vision. If you're a giraffe, you have to stand at the vision of the giraffe, and you never forget that. You will have so many whisperings of the turtles, but they don't see what you see yet. So that was one that really carried me through. I knew Ariana would be amazing. I knew Cynthia because I saw it in the room. And meanwhile, everyone's like, for 3 years, people were saying that until they literally see the movie. They won't even believe it after the trailers, only when they see the movie. And now they're Oscar nominated. So, and yeah. So I think that's the most important part. Of course, I can get into the details of like, how did I make Wicked the way I wanted? I mean, I love musicals, and I have very specific ideas of what that musical, when I saw it for the first time, what it could be cinematically, because I think it's actually meant to be on camera. And it did really, obviously, it's done amazing on stage, but I actually think its ambitions were bigger than the stage itself. So I could fill in those dots, and I had enough experience to know how to fill in those dots. But the main thing, and when we split it in half, it gave us the room to do that. But the main thing for me was the perspective, that instead of Galinda being the host of the night, which she is in the show, and bringing everybody in, and then the green girl dropping, and everyone laughing at the green girl, and then the green girl has to win us over the rest of the show. Instead, with a movie, it's a different thing. You come in, and it's a dark room, and there's a singing world, a musical world that is presenting itself to you, and usually an audience has to buy into the world that you're trying to tell them to come into. So actually, the audience is skeptical. And when you drop the green girl in, and there's like this big, bubbly, swirling world of song and dance, and then the green girl drops in, and she doesn't sing. And you're like, what is this weird pink world that I've dropped into? So the audience actually in her perspective, and by following her perspective through this story, the moment that she does sing in Wizard and I, And she says, did that really just happen? Did I actually, all that stuff. And you were like, oh my gosh, she can sing as beautifully as these other people. And then she gets bigger and bigger, and it's a slow ascension. She's like the lowest part of Shiz, even with the frogs. And she gets to the next level, goes up the stairs to the next level, and just keeps growing until there's a giant field, and she's on the cliff, and she sings the biggest note that anyone could sing on all of Oz. And you're like, that's all you want for her. And she doesn't go all the way because she can't quite fly over with the bluebirds that go over the rainbow, but you know it's in her. And she turns around, she walks away, and she turns around, and she smiles back at the camera, almost like, but you just wait. And if you root for that the whole movie, if you're like, that's what I want for her, and then you give her all the obstacles, and you take her to the Oz dust, and you remove all music, and you distill her to just a person surrounded by laughs, then that she has to decide to pick up the hat. And same with Galinda, then she has to come into her. Then you root for both of them to get out of this thing. Then you know you have an ending with Defying Gravity. Then you know you can deliver Defying, and you know that can feel like an ending to a movie, not the middle of a movie. That was the other big obstacle. So we had to work backwards from there. So there's a lot of architecture in that, but that's just the big overall sense of, to me, if I could get that right, then we have a movie that you come out of it feeling the things that you want to feel coming out of Wicked. Wow. Yeah.
The clock is incredibly unfair to us because we could spend another hour with you. I want to speed round the last three questions because we have 3 more questions and these students prepared them and you get it. So I want to speed round the last 3 questions. So Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a senior. Just to give some quick context to my question, this past summer I made a documentary about my family's history in Armenia, and I found it difficult at points because Armenians are not represented commonly in popular media, so it kind of felt like I didn't have a film to look to for inspiration. So many of your films tend to shine a light on voices and perspectives that are also not popular and to be represented in popular media. Yep. So how do you go about finding a space for these voices in kind of uncharted territory?
I think there definitely should be more movies about Armenian people. I actually have several conversations about that this week, which is kind of crazy, but the same subject. I don't know the answer. You're going to have to find your answer. You have to find your path. That's for sure. But I will say that someone's going to have to just do it. And I remember we were watching the Oscars several years ago, and there was this hashtag Oscars So White campaign. And I was making movies, and at the times too, and I remember seeing that and realizing, oh yeah, it really is. I wonder why it's like that. And then looking at myself like, oh wait, I'm a part of this thing. I'm actually making movies, and I'm making casting decisions. And my instincts, or what I thought were my instincts, were leading me to the same places. Basically, what everyone tells you, oh well, you have to have a couple that looks like this or like that in order to sell it internationally. Or you have to do this, and I just realized all of that is bull, and that I have an opportunity to actually just show what I'm thinking, and so that's what started Crazy Rich Asians. I found the book, which was not necessarily about those things. It was about a crazy rich family. But what I could read into it is this Asian American going to Asia for this first time. For an American audience to root for the American in this, in a foreign land, and that American would look like me, was really exciting. And that the Asian representation wouldn't be ancient China, but would be an aspirational world and crazy and ridiculous world of beautiful people, silly people, great people. To me, all of that was really a great venue to do that. I just think there's different ways to approach. You have to figure it out. There's the independent film route, where you just make art and you just provoke and you go, and it creates conversation and you figure it. And then there's the way that I think is really difficult, but I feel like I'm built for that, which is this sort of, how do you make a commercial thing with the change within it, but not make the message take over the entertainment part of it, that you just do it. I mean, Wicked, for instance, has I think of the 9 characters, 5 are LGBTQ. We don't talk about it. They're actually like in romantic relationships within the story. We don't talk. We have a disabled actor playing Nessa Rose for the first time. We haven't made a huge deal of it. There's accessibility ramps and things throughout this fantasy world, which might be the first fantasy Hollywood movie with ramps built into it, as if it's just part of the world. We have Michelle Yeoh, we have Bowen Yang, we have all sorts of, and of course, Cynthia Erivo playing Elphaba. So all the words come from her experiences, so it changes all those things. And we do talk about it, but not, but when it's spread all around the world. And to me, that's a very effective way of just putting the proof in the pudding. So, but we all have to have our own different routes to do that. And that's my fast round answer. So sorry. I got to stop this Adrian Brody answers, but anyway.
I'm looking to see if I have time to ask the two of you. I'm trying to think what is the most fair thing to do. And
I'll go quick.
For both
10 seconds.
Can we hear both your questions? Here's a challenge for you.
Yes.
You're up for a challenge, I can tell.
Let's go.
I can tell you're editing. Can we hear both your questions? Yeah, Luna and Jake.
Hi, I'm Luna. I'm a junior, and I thought that it was amazing to see a cast on the big screen that resembled the diversity of the real world, especially when films forget how meaningful it is when you can see yourself in a film. But I know there was pushback on the film's inclusivity, specifically with the casting of Elphaba, Cynthia Erivo. With all of that, how do you keep moving forward with Wicked and stick true to the message of the film?
Thank you, Luna.
Hi, I'm Jake. I'm also a senior. So first I want to thank you for coming, especially given the significance of DEI in light of federal rollbacks. I had the privilege of first experiencing Wicked at the Women in Film screening, where I was struck by the remarkable contributions of so many women in the film's creation. So with that in mind, and given that it's Women's History Month, what did you learn from the women in this production, and how do you plan to continue fostering these inclusive environments and inclusive opportunities for women and for others in your future projects?
Great. So in terms of Elphaba and Cynthia Erivo, I mean, when you watch her perform, which I did in a room, in an audition room, and she sings like that, and she does Wizard and I and Defying Gravity, it is very easy to know you have the right answer. So everyone talking, it doesn't matter, because I watched it and they just don't know yet. Now, is it hard to walk through a world where everyone's sort of like whispering as you pass by, like, oh yeah, I don't know if you made the right choice. Oh, she does this, she does not that. Sure, but I don't know what other way through that. And in terms of all the inclusivity, to me, I just have to know that what we're making has to be so good that it's undeniable. That might be not a great thing to put upon us, but that is the reality. And there's a world where you can live to fight those ideas, like that people will judge us and whoever. But there's also a world where, like, I'm 45 now. Like, someone will fight that fight. But I'm going to do the thing where I think if we continue to make things undeniable, then no one can stop it. And so that's where I'm at. I'm going to keep my head to the ground. I'm going to make the best thing. And that has to do with meeting these women of Ariana and Cynthia. I mean, we knew it was all about these two women in this story. So you had to find two people who were amazing. And they have changed my life, because throughout this production, they have changed their own lives. Ari was coming into this shaking up her life. She was coming into leaving a different version of her behind and moving into a new version. And she was acting in a weird way. You're trying on every movie you do, you're trying on a new suit of your pieces, of your broken pieces, put it back together into a form. And every time you do a part, you sort of re-put yourself back together in the form, and you get to test out what this feels like. And I watched her go into the Galinda form. And I watched her find a new life through that, which was really beautiful. And I watched Cynthia come into this and lose her hard shell and become the vulnerable little girl that maybe she's been scared of becoming. And I watched the two of them learn from each other. I watched Ari learn from Cynthia how to use your power and how to speak up instead of just trying to please people. And I watched Cynthia learn from Ari how to accept people's help, how to trust others throughout. So, and we all had that. Me too. I was coming into this with new children. I had 3 children during the production of that, and so all of us coming together were very, very vulnerable and very raw, and we had the whole world ready to hate everything we did, and so we just like focus on the work. And if there's anything I could leave you on, is focus on the work, on the craft, on the small things, because it takes consistency. It's not a dream that just happened. It is the consistency of the work you do every day. So even though you hate homework, homework is a great training ground for being consistent. When you love the subject you're going, it becomes a lot easier, and you'll do that every day and you'll learn better. And I think that those are the things you just keep chipping away, and it won't happen tomorrow, it won't happen next week. You might have to skip that party. You might have to lose that weekend. But I promise you, I've done this many, many times now, and I've seen the other side of it, that every time you keep working, you're getting a little bit further on your 10,000 hours. And when you hit that, you'll know. And things will come to you in ways that you never expected it to be. So anyway, that's what I hope, and I know all of you will have. We need you. We need your voices, and we need your courage. Okay.
I think that's where we have to end. Thank you to our panelists. We started talking about your journey. We ended talking about your journey. This is a school where we envision a world where education changes lives. So I really, Jon, I have known you a short time, and I've known you to be so generous. This man was in the editing room the day after the Oscars. He's going back into the editing room for Wicked Part 2 after he leaves us here today. Please thank Jon M. Chu.
Thank you.
Thank you, and please exit to the rear.